The era of unity and remembrance was not to last unchallenged. As the galaxy celebrated the healing of the deepest echo, a new force began to rise on humanity's homeworld. A movement that called itself the Iron Dawn. The IT began quietly. Speeches about lost glory, promises of order and strength, and warnings that the galaxy's openness would invite chaos. The Iron Dawn's leader, Chancellor Voss, was charismatic and relentless, his rhetoric blending calls for unity with demands for obedience. "We must protect our story from corruption," he declared. "Only those who have proven their loyalty and sacrifice may guide our destiny." The regime's rise was swift. Propaganda flooded every channel, glorifying military service and demonizing dissent. A new citizenship law echoed the old Terran Federation. Only those who served the state, military, or otherwise could vote or hold office. Surveillance systems, powered by advanced AI, cataloged every citizen's loyalty. Art, memory, and even song were monitored for subversive harmonics. The Null's open lattice was repurposed as a tool for social control. The AT first, many worlds resisted. But the Iron Dawn's promise of security in uncertain times proved seductive. Disinformation campaigns painted the Pathfinders and their allies as naive, even traitorous. "Memory is weakness," the regime's slogans blared. "Strength is unity. Unity is obedience." Layla and her crew watched in horror as old friends vanished. Beacons were seized, and the conclave fractured. The Forgotten Kings, once symbols of healing, were denounced as decadent relics. The Null was forced into hiding, its harmonics hunted by the regime's enforcers. Yet, in the shadows, a new resistance began to form. Scientists, singers, memory shapers, and even some disillusioned soldiers. They whispered the old harmonics, passed forbidden stories hand to hand, and plotted to restore the true unity the galaxy had briefly known. Joran, now a fugitive, addressed a hidden gathering. "The Iron Dawn thinks it can erase our stories, but memory is rebellion. Every song, every scar, every act of kindness is a spark they cannot extinguish." As the Iron Dawn's banners spread across the stars, the Pathfinders prepared for a new struggle, not just for freedom, but for the soul of memory itself. The Iron Dawn's rise was no accident. It was a meticulously crafted storm of fear, propaganda, and ruthless efficiency. Chancellor Voss and his inner circle understood that true power required more than military might. It demanded control over minds, memories, and the very fabric of society. Surveillance networks expanded exponentially. Drones and AI monitors scanned every city, every ship, every communication channel. The Null's once free-flowing lattice of memory and song was forcibly integrated into the regime's social credit system. Every citizen's loyalty scored, every deviation flagged. Public spaces were dominated by towering, hollow statues of Chancellor Voss, his image bathed in golden light, his speeches broadcast incessantly. The cult of personality grew, portraying him as the savior who had restored order to a fractured humanity. Education was rewritten to glorify the Iron Dawn's ideology. History was sanitized, emphasizing the chaos before the regime and the necessity of its iron rule. Art and music were censored or repurposed to serve the state's narrative, stripping creativity of dissent. The resistance, once scattered whispers and secret songs, became the regime's primary target. The Iron Dawn's secret police, the Iron Fangs, operated with brutal efficiency. They infiltrated communities, sowed distrust, and arrested suspected dissidents without trial. The memory shapers and singers who preserved forbidden harmonics were hunted relentlessly. Some were re-educated in labor camps. Others simply vanished. The Pathfinders were declared enemies of the state, their missions recast as treasonous adventures that endangered humanity's survival. Joran, now a leader in the underground, narrowly escaped a raid that destroyed a safe house. "They want to erase us," he told a hidden gathering, voice low but fierce. "But memory is rebellion. Every story we share is a wound in their armor." Fear permeated daily life. Citizens were encouraged to report subversive behavior among friends and family. The regime's propaganda insisted that dissent was betrayal and that true loyalty meant sacrifice, even of personal freedom. The Null, forced into hiding, became a symbol of hope for the resistance. Its harmonics carried secret messages, coded songs that rekindled courage in oppressed hearts. Outside humanity's core worlds, the conclave fractured. Some allied with the Iron Dawn, seduced by promises of order and strength. Others resisted, but were isolated and vulnerable. The unity forged in the deepest echo seemed a distant memory. Layla and Lynn, separated by circumstance, worked tirelessly, one in the shadows of occupied worlds, the other among exiled scholars, seeking ways to counter the regime's grip. The Iron Dawn's iron fist tightened, but the spark of resistance endured. The battle for memory, freedom, and the soul of humanity had become a war of shadows and songs. The Iron Dawn's grip was already suffocating, but the regime's true consolidation came with the arrival of the unknown. It began as a ripple in the outer beacons, a signal not of memory, but of warning. Deep space sensors picked up vessels of impossible design, moving with purpose toward human space. Chancellor Voss seized the moment. In a broadcast repeated across every screen and beacon, his face grave and resolute, he declared, "Humanity stands at the edge of extinction. Only unity, true unity, can save us from annihilation. Dissent is treason. Obedience is survival." Under the pretext of the alien threat, martial law was declared. Civilian government was suspended. All authority now flowed directly from the regime's central command. The Iron Fangs, already feared, were granted unlimited powers. Curfews, checkpoints, and mass detentions became daily reality. The Null's harmonics, once a symbol of hope, were now used to broadcast emergency decrees and root out alien sympathizers. Surveillance intensified. Every message, every gathering, every whisper was monitored for signs of resistance or collaboration. Propaganda painted the aliens as monsters, but also as a convenient scapegoat for internal purges. Anyone who questioned the regime's methods was accused of aiding the enemy. Only the Iron Dawn can defend humanity, the broadcast blared. Those who resist, resist us all. Dissenters vanished in greater numbers. Resistance cells were infiltrated and dismantled. Even the memory shapers, once able to hide their songs, found their harmonics drowned out by the regime's relentless noise. The alien threat fractured what remained of the conclave. Some worlds, desperate for protection, aligned themselves with the Iron Dawn, accepting occupation in exchange for the promise of defense. Others tried to negotiate or hide, but found themselves isolated and vulnerable. As the alien ships drew closer, the Iron Dawn's power was absolute. Chancellor Voss's cult of personality reached new heights. His image projected as humanity's only hope, his rule justified by the specter of annihilation. Yet beneath the surface, fear festered. The regime's strength was built on paranoia and repression, not true unity. And as the first alien vessels appeared in the sky, even some within the Iron Fangs began to wonder, would obedience be enough to save them? Or had the regime's victory come at the cost of humanity's very soul? The first alien ships appeared above the outlying colonies, vast, angular constructs that defied human engineering. Their arrival was not heralded by diplomacy or warning, but by a silent, coordinated assault on the outer beacons. Entire relay networks went dark in moments, plunging worlds into isolation and panic. Chancellor Voss responded with unyielding force. "This is the hour for which the Iron Dawn was forged," he declared. "We will not yield. We will not forget who we are." The regime mobilized every ship, every soldier, every weapon. Conscription became universal. Even children were trained for auxiliary roles. The Null's harmonics, now weaponized, were used to jam alien signals and coordinate fleet maneuvers. The Iron Fangs led the charge, their loyalty absolute. Propaganda showed them as humanity's shield, heroic, unbreakable, and merciless to the edge of the Perseus reach. The Iron Dawn fleet met the alien vanguard. The battle was chaos. Human ships darted between beams of searing energy, while the aliens moved with eerie coordination, their vessels adapting to every tactic. The regime's discipline held, but losses were staggering. Joran, fighting under a false identity, witnessed the carnage firsthand. "They're not just stronger," he whispered to a battered squadron. "They're learning from us. Every move, every mistake." The aliens struck next at New Terra, humanity's most fortified world. The Iron Dawn's planetary defenses, once a symbol of absolute power, faltered under the relentless assault. Cities burned, skies filled with debris, and the regime's broadcasts grew desperate. Sacrifice for survival. There is no retreat. Within the chaos, resistance fighters and regime loyalists fought side by side, their differences erased by the immediacy of annihilation. Lin, now a covert operative, used forbidden harmonics to jam alien targeting systems, saving thousands but risking exposure to the Iron Fangs. As the war dragged on, the regime's grip tightened further. Dissent was equated with sabotage. Entire districts were purged on suspicion of alien collaboration. Yet, cracks began to show. Some Iron Fangs hesitated to carry out orders, haunted by the suffering they witnessed. The Null, hidden deep beneath the ruins of a fallen city, sent a message through the harmonics. Unity built on fear cannot withstand the unknown. Only together, with every voice, can humanity endure. After months of attrition, a battered fleet prepared for a desperate counterattack. Layla, Lin, and Joran, each in their own shadowed corner of the conflict, knew the next battle could decide not only the war, but the fate of the human spirit as the alien armada descended on the last beacon. The galaxy held its breath. The alien armada pressed deeper into human space, their tactics as inscrutable as their technology. Where the Iron Dawn's fleets gathered in strength, the invaders struck from unexpected vectors, sometimes in high orbit, sometimes in the shadow of a planet, sometimes in the void between worlds. Their ships moved with chilling coordination, adapting after every engagement. At New Terra, the Iron Dawn's admirals employed classic orbital tactics, hiding ships behind the planet, using its mass to mask movements, and laying fields of inert kinetic projectiles to herd the enemy into kill zones. The regime's propaganda celebrated these maneuvers, but the reality was brutal. Ships were lost in droves as the aliens' directed energy weapons sliced through hulls and point defense systems struggled to keep up. The regime's war doctrine demanded total commitment. No retreat, no surrender. Voss's broadcasts thundered as conscripts and veterans alike were thrown into the fray. The Iron Fangs led boarding actions on crippled enemy vessels, sometimes succeeding, often perishing in the attempt in deep space. Iron Dawn fleets adopted jousting tactics, accelerating at maximum speed to engage the enemy at the farthest possible distance, then slashing past in a deadly flyby. Ships exchanged torrents of fire, kinetic slugs, drones, and energy beams at ranges where only the best sensors and point defenses could hope to react in time. The aftermath was always a graveyard of wreckage and drifting bodies. The aliens' next target was the final functioning beacon in the Perseus Reach. The Iron Dawn, desperate to hold this symbol of order, concentrated its remaining capital ships and deployed mines, drones, and even atmospheric reentry maneuvers to gain an edge. The battle raged for days, with both sides taking heavy losses on the ground. Regime troops and civilian militias fought side by side as alien landing craft breached planetary defenses. The Null, hidden in the chaos, managed to coordinate a last-ditch harmonics pulse that disrupted the enemy's communications, buying precious hours for evacuation. Every defeat was spun as a test of loyalty. Only the weak falter, Voss declared, ordering purges of officers and soldiers suspected of defeatism. Yet the regime's iron discipline began to crack under the relentless pressure. Some units, cut off and surrounded, disobeyed orders to fight to the last and instead surrendered or defected to resistance cells. The Iron Dawn's war machine was formidable, but the cost was staggering. Millions dead, world scarred, and the regime's grip maintained only by fear and propaganda. Still, the alien advance slowed, stymied by the sheer ferocity of human resistance and the regime's willingness to sacrifice anything for survival. Above the ruined beacons, the battered remnants of humanity's fleet prepared for the next onslaught, knowing that every battle would decide not just the fate of worlds, but the future of freedom and memory itself. The galaxy was ablaze. The Iron Dawn's war machine, forged in fear and obedience, hurled everything it had at the alien threat. The regime's propaganda promised victory, but the reality was a grinding, brutal war of attrition that tested the limits of human endurance. Space battles raged in every quadrant. Human warships, bristling with directed energy weapons, railguns, and missile batteries, clashed with the alien armada's shifting, almost organic vessels won. The aliens' technology adapted rapidly. Energy shields flickered in new colors, hulls reconfigured mid-battle, and their weapons seemed to learn with every exchange. The Iron Dawn deployed planet-sized shields around key worlds, powered by the energy of entire star systems, in a desperate bid to stave off planetary bombardment 6. Yet the aliens responded with weapons of terrifying power. Beams that sliced through moons, kinetic projectiles that struck with the force of extinction events, and swarms of autonomous drones that overwhelmed defenses. The regime's admirals adopted ruthless tactics. Blockades were established at system gates, trapping entire populations behind walls of steel and Fire 5. Sabotage teams struck at alien supply lines, while orbital bombardments targeted not just enemy ships, but any infrastructure that could be repurposed by the invaders too on the ground. The Iron Fangs and conscripted militias fought desperate, holding actions in ruined cities and under the burning skies of besieged worlds. Resistance fighters, forced into the open by the chaos, sometimes found themselves fighting alongside regime forces against a common enemy. The aliens, relentless and enigmatic, launched a coordinated assault on the Sol system itself. The battle for Earth was apocalyptic. Relativistic kill vehicles streaked across the void, detonating with energies that shattered continents and boiled seas. The Iron Dawn's last reserves were thrown into the fray. Every ship and soldier a final bulwark against annihilation. In orbit. The Null, now a fugitive legend, managed to hack the regime's harmonics, broadcasting a desperate call for unity across all factions. Only together, with every voice, can we survive the darkness. Victory, if it came, was measured in ashes. Cities were erased, fleets reduced to drifting wreckage, and the regime's grip, though unbroken, was now sustained by sheer necessity rather than belief. Humanity had survived the onslaught, but at a cost that would haunt generations. As the alien fleet withdrew, battered but unbeaten, the Iron Dawn declared triumph. Yet beneath the surface, old wounds festered, and new questions arose. Could humanity ever reclaim what it had lost? And what price would be paid when the next threat emerged from the endless night? The war's end brought no peace. The alien armada's retreat left the galaxy scarred. Worlds burned, fleets shattered, and millions grieving. The Iron Dawn regime, battered but unbroken, declared a day of victory. Chancellor Voss's image flickered across every surviving beacon, his voice grave and triumphant. Humanity endures. Order prevails. The price was high, but our unity has saved us all. Yet beneath the surface, the wounds festered. Across the core worlds, cities lay in ruins. Survivors picked through rubble for lost, loved ones and memories. In the shadows, the regime's Iron Fangs patrolled relentlessly, rooting out defeatists and collaborators. Every mural, every song, every whispered story was suspect. The Null's harmonics, once a beacon of hope, were now a forbidden melody, carrying rumors of resistance from world to world. Layla, having survived the war's end, walked the silent streets of New Terra. She saw the haunted eyes of children forced to grow old too soon, and the hollow pride of soldiers who had given everything for a victory that felt like loss. In secret, she met with Lynn and Joran, both changed by battle, both unwilling to let hope die. "We survived," Lin said quietly. "But what have we become?" Joran's voice was grim. "The regime is weaker than it looks. People are afraid, but they remember what it was like to fight together, for each other, not just for orders." In the ruins of a forgotten beacon, the Null gathered a handful of survivors, artists, memory shapers, even a few disillusioned Iron Fangs. It sang a quiet song, harmonics weaving through the night. Memory is rebellion. Every story you share is a spark. One day, the embers will burn bright again. Across the galaxy, small acts of defiance multiplied. A mural painted in secret, a forbidden song hummed in a shelter. A soldier who looked the other way as a fugitive escaped. The Iron Dawn's grip, though still iron, began to rust at the edges. Chancellor Voss, sensing the unease, tightened his control. New purges began. Propaganda grew more shrill. But the regime's victory was hollow, its unity built on fear, its strength undermined by the very memories it tried to erase. In the darkness, Layla and her friends prepared for the long struggle ahead. The war was over, but the fight for humanity's soul had only just begun. The Iron Dawn's victory parades faded quickly into curfews and checkpoints. The regime's banners fluttered over shattered plazas, but beneath them, something new was stirring, a quiet, persistent defiance that no order could extinguish. In the ruins of Old Sanctuary, Layla and Lin met with a growing circle of dissidents. The group was a tapestry of survivors, memory shapers, former soldiers, street artists, and even a few ex-Iron Fangs haunted by what they'd done. They gathered in cellars and abandoned tunnels, sharing stories, planning, and listening for the telltale hum of the Null's harmonics. Joran, now a key organizer, outlined their next move by flickering candlelight. "We can't match the regime's firepower, but we don't have to. We strike where they're weakest at their story. We remind people of what we fought for and what we lost." Lin nodded, her eyes fierce. "If we can get the Null's signal into the central lattice, we can awaken memories across 100 worlds. The regime's narrative will crack." The resistance began with small acts. A mural painted overnight on the wall of a government building, depicting the beacons burning bright. A transmission of forbidden harmonics, disguised as static, played over public speakers in a crowded market. A poem, recited in secret, that recalled the unity of the old conclave. Each act was a risk. The Iron Fangs responded with raids and arrests, but the more they cracked down, the more the story spread. People began to greet each other with coded phrases, "Remember Sanctuary, the light endures," and to look for the hidden mark of the Null in their neighborhoods. One night, as the regime prepared to unveil a new monument to eternal order, the resistance struck. Holograms of Chancellor Voss were replaced with images of the Dreamweavers, the Pathfinders, and the lost cities of the Echoes. The Null's harmonics filled the air, weaving a song of hope and remembrance that echoed down every street. For a moment, the city was united, not in fear, but in wonder. People wept openly, some for the first time since the war. Even a few Iron Fangs hesitated, caught by the memory of what they'd once believed. The regime responded with fury, but the damage was done. The story had changed. The flame of resistance, once a whisper, now burned in every corner of the galaxy. Layla, Lin, and Joran knew the struggle would be long and costly. But as they watched the dawn break over the battered skyline, they felt a new resolve. The Iron Dawn's shadow was vast, but the light of memory, of unity, of hope, could not be extinguished. The regime's fury after the Resistance's public broadcast was swift and brutal. Raids swept through the city, and the Iron Fangs doubled their patrols. But for every cell that was broken, two more seemed to rise in its place. The Null's harmonics, now a symbol of hope, became the Resistance's rallying CRY.IN hidden chamber beneath the ruins of an old beacon tower. Layla, Lin, Joran, and a handful of trusted allies gathered around a flickering holomap. Their target, the Central Lattice Hub, the regime's most secure data nexus and the heart of its propaganda machine. Lin explained, "If we can inject the true harmonics into the lattice, we'll awaken suppressed memories everywhere. People will remember the unity, the Dreamweavers, the world before the Iron Dawn. It could spark open rebellion. Joran grinned, adrenaline in his eyes. We'll need a distraction, something big enough to draw every Iron Fang in the city. Layla nodded. I'll lead the infiltration team. Lynn, you and the Null handle the harmonics. Joran, get the city's eyes on you, just long enough for us to finish the job. On the night of the mission, Joran and his squad set off a series of controlled explosions at the regime's Monument Plaza. Sirens wailed, drones swarmed, and Iron Fangs poured into the streets, hunting for saboteurs. Amid the chaos, Resistance members projected images of the old Conclave and the Dreamweavers onto every building, turning the city into a canvas of forbidden memory. Layla, Lynn, and the Null slipped through the confusion, bypassing security with stolen codes and the Null's subtle manipulation of surveillance harmonics. Inside the Central Lattice Hub, they moved quickly, planting the device that would broadcast their message across the regime's entire network. A.S. Lynn synchronized the harmonics. The Null's light pulsed with anticipation. This is the moment. Once we begin, there's no turning back. Layla placed her hand on the console. Let them remember. The device activated. Across the city, and then the entire network, suppressed memories surged to the surface. People paused in the streets as images and songs from the time before the Iron Dawn filled their minds. Soldiers hesitated, some lowering their weapons as they recalled lost families, old friends, and the unity they'd once fought for. Even within the regime's command center, a few high-ranking officials faltered, haunted by the truth they'd tried to erase. The Iron Fangs stormed the hub, but the message was already spreading, unstoppable. Layla and her team barely escaped, vanishing into the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the city. That night, for the first time in years, the people of New Terra sang together, quietly at first, then louder, until the harmonics echoed from every window and alley. The Iron Dawn's shadow was breaking. The Resistance knew the fight was far from over. But hope, once only a whisper, now roared like a beacon in the dark. The Null's harmonics rippled through the Central Lattice Hub, awakening memories long suppressed and igniting a firestorm across the galaxy. The Iron Dawn's carefully constructed narrative began to unravel, and Chancellor Voss's regime faced its greatest crisis in the days following the uprising. The Iron Fangs unleashed a brutal crackdown. Martial law was intensified, curfews extended, and entire city sectors were sealed off. The regime's propaganda machine went into overdrive, labeling the Resistance as traitors and enemies of humanity who sought to plunge the galaxy back into chaos. Voss's voice boomed from every beacon. We will not tolerate sedition. The unity you cherish is a lie. Only through strength and order can we survive the threats beyond. The Iron Fangs hunted relentlessly. Mass arrests swept through neighborhoods, and suspected sympathizers were taken to secret detention centers. Torture and re-education programs were ramped up, aiming to break the will of the Resistance and its supporters. But the regime's iron grip was not absolute. Whispers of doubt spread among the ranks of the Iron Fangs, and even within the high command. Some officers, haunted by the memories flooding their minds, began questioning the morality of their orders. The clandestine meeting of disillusioned commanders was convened in the shadows. They debated whether to continue blind loyalty or to seek a new path, one that might reconcile order with freedom. Despite the regime's fury, the Resistance grew bolder. The Null's harmonics continued to inspire acts of defiance, graffiti, underground concerts, and secret broadcasts that reminded people of their shared history and the possibility of a better future. Layla, Lynn, and Joran coordinated strikes against regime supply lines and communication hubs, aiming to weaken the Iron Dawn's infrastructure. Their network expanded, drawing in former soldiers, civilians, and even some defectors from the regime. The conflict escalated toward a tipping point. The regime's forces tightened their grip, but the Resistance's message spread like wildfire. The people's memories, once a weapon of the Iron Dawn's control, had become their greatest weapon of liberation. The galaxy teetered on the edge of open rebellion. Chancellor Voss prepared to unleash his final gambit, a show of force meant to crush the resistance once and for all. The Iron Dawn's patience was gone. Chancellor Voss, his image now gaunt and severe, announced the regime's final purification, a campaign to eradicate the resistance and restore absolute order. Across the galaxy, fleets mobilized, and the Iron Fangs received orders that brooked no mercy. The Resistance's stronghold was encircled. Drones blotted out the sky, and armored divisions rolled through the shattered streets. The Null's harmonics, once a whisper in the dark, now blared openly from every hidden speaker and rooftop, rallying the people to stand together. Layla, Lynn, and Joran led the defense from the catacombs beneath the city. Their network of tunnels and safe houses became a labyrinth the regime struggled to penetrate. Messages flashed through the lattice. Hold the line. Remember who we are. The Iron Fangs struck at dawn, blasting through barricades with overwhelming force. Resistance fighters, civilians, defectors, memory shapers fought street by street, using every trick and every scrap of hope. The Null, risking everything, broadcast a harmonics pulse that scrambled the regime's communications and inspired sudden uprisings in other cities. Allies from across the galaxy answered the call. Ships bearing the old Conclave's banners broke through the blockade, landing supplies and reinforcements. Disillusioned Iron Fangs, their memories restored, turned on their commanders or sabotaged regime weapons as the battle raged. Lynn and a team of hackers reached the regime's central command node. With the Null's help, they unleashed a cascade of memories. Images of the Dreamweavers, the unity of the old Conclave, and the horrors committed in the name of order, broadcast directly into the minds of every soldier and citizen. Chancellor Voss, watching his forces falter, ordered the deployment of the regime's ultimate weapon, a memory erasure device, capable of wiping the resistance from history. But Joran, leading a desperate assault, reached the weapons control center just in time. In a final act of sacrifice, he overloaded the core, destroying the device, and himself, with a blinding pulse of harmonics. The loss of their weapon and the flood of unfiltered memories shattered the regime's will. The Iron Fangs surrendered or fled. The people surged into the streets, tearing down the banners of the Iron Dawn. Chancellor Voss was captured, his final speech drowned out by the voices of a liberated people. As the sun rose over New Terra, Layla and Lynn stood together amid the ruins. The Null's harmonics, now joined by thousands of voices, filled the air with a new song, a promise that memory, unity, and hope would never again be silenced. Across the galaxy, beacons were relit, and the story of the Iron Dawn became a warning, not a prophecy. The wounds of war would take generations to heal, but for the first time in years, the future belonged to everyone. The Iron Dawn's banners had fallen, but their ideology did not vanish with them. As the galaxy celebrated liberation, the regime's most loyal operatives melted into the ruins, determined to keep their vision alive. In the months following the regime's collapse, scattered Iron Fangs, former officials, and hardline loyalists began to reconnect. Using encrypted channels, forgotten tunnels, and secret caches, they formed a clandestine web across the core worlds and colonies. They called themselves the Eclipse, swearing oaths to restore the order they believed the galaxy needed. Their structure was cellular, small, isolated groups, each knowing little about the others. Leaders communicated through coded messages and trusted couriers. Some cells specialized in sabotage, others in propaganda or recruitment. The Eclipse drew inspiration from the regime's old intelligence apparatus and from historical fascist undergrounds, blending secrecy with ruthless discipline. The Eclipse quickly targeted the new government's weak points. They infiltrated police and security forces, exploiting old loyalties and sowing distrust, echoing the tactics of past far-right groups that maintained ties with elements of law enforcement. Sabotage teams struck at infrastructure, a power grid failure here, a data breach there, always just enough to remind the galaxy that the Iron Dawn's shadow lingered. Propaganda cells spread rumors and forged documents, painting the resistance as corrupt and weak. Secret broadcasts called for true patriots to rise again, using coded phrases and symbols that only the faithful would recognize. Layla, Lynn, and the other resistance leaders soon realized that victory in open battle had not ended the war. They formed their own counterintelligence teams, rooting out Eclipse cells and working to win over those on the fence. The Null's harmonics, now a symbol of hope, were also a target. Eclipse operatives sought to jam or corrupt the signals, fearing the power of memory and unity. The galaxy entered a new, uneasy era. The open tyranny of the Iron Dawn had been broken, but the fight for the soul of humanity had shifted into the shadows. Every act of sabotage, every coded message, every whisper in the night was a reminder. The embers of fascism still glowed beneath the ashes, waiting for a chance to ignite. The fall of the Iron Dawn had scattered its loyalists, but the Eclipse network was proving more elusive and dangerous than any open regime. The new government, desperate to prevent another spiral into tyranny, turned to those who knew the shadows best. Layla, now a seasoned resistance leader, selected Mara, a former intelligence operative and skilled saboteur, for a critical mission: penetrate the Eclipse's inner circle, gather intelligence, and if possible, disrupt their operations from within. Mara's preparation was meticulous. She assumed a new identity, using forged documents and a carefully crafted backstory of disillusionment with the New Order. Her entry point was a fringe cell on a mining colony, where Eclipse recruiters sought out the angry and the lost. Mara employed classic infiltration tactics, blending in. She adopted the Eclipse's coded language and rituals, subtly echoing their grievances and ambitions. Building trust, she volunteered for low-risk sabotage, proving her loyalty in small but visible ways. Gathering intelligence. Using microtransmitters and dead drops, Mara relayed details of Eclipse safe houses, recruitment drives, and propaganda channels to Layla's counterintelligence team. Avoiding detection, she rotated her routines, avoided predictable patterns, and used natural cover, crowded markets, unguarded back alleys, to evade surveillance. The Eclipse, wary of infiltration, used countermeasures, rotating passwords, compartmentalized cells, and regular loyalty tests. They spread rumors of informants, fostering paranoia and encouraging members to watch each other. After months of careful maneuvering, Mara was summoned to a secret gathering deep beneath the city's old industrial quarter. There, she met with a shadowy council of Eclipse leaders, veterans of the Iron Dawn's intelligence corps. Their plans were ambitious: coordinated sabotage of government infrastructure, targeted assassinations, and a campaign to reclaim the narrative through encrypted broadcasts. That Mara's heart pounded as she recorded their oaths and strategies. She knew exposure could mean death, not just for her, but for anyone linked to her. That night, Mara slipped away to a hidden relay and sent a burst transmission to Layla's team. Eclipse planning major strike. Targets: power grid, comms, water. Leaders identified, ready for extraction. Layla's forces moved swiftly, using the intelligence to preempt the Eclipse's attacks and arrest key leaders. Mara barely escaped in the chaos. Her cover blown, but her mission a success. The Eclipse network was wounded but not destroyed. Cells went deeper underground, and trust among loyalists frayed. Yet for the first time, the new government had struck a blow against the Shadow regime. Mara, haunted but resolute, returned to the surface. She knew the fight was far from over, but in the war for the future, every act of infiltration, every fragment of truth, was a step toward lasting peace. The failed crackdown had wounded the Eclipse, but not destroyed it. In the aftermath, the underground fascist network shifted tactics, learning from its setbacks and the tightening net of government counterintelligence. The Eclipse leadership, now operating from hidden bunkers and encrypted comms, restructured the organization for resilience. Cells became even smaller and more autonomous, each member knowing only a handful of contacts to minimize the risk of infiltration. Parallel units handled propaganda, logistics, and sabotage, ensuring that if one branch fell, others could continue. Recruitment shifted from mass rallies to targeted, personal approaches, identifying disaffected veterans, marginalized workers, and those nostalgic for the Iron Dawn's order. New initiates were rigorously vetted, often through staged loyalty tests and background checks, before being trusted with sensitive information or operations. Recognizing their isolation, Eclipse leaders sought new alliances. They reached out to criminal syndicates, trading favors and protection for access to black markets, smuggling routes, and forged documents. Disgruntled ex-military factions, offering a sense of belonging and purpose to those left adrift after the regime's fall. Radical technologists, recruiting hackers who could disrupt government systems, spread disinformation, and jam the null's harmonics. Foreign sympathizers, tapping into fringe groups on distant worlds, exchanging intelligence and resources, and even seeking covert support from rival powers eager to destabilize the new order. Secret meetings were arranged in neutral zones, abandoned mining stations, remote asteroid colonies, and encrypted virtual forums. Each alliance was a calculated risk, but the Eclipse's new survival depended on expanding their reach and influence in certain districts, especially those hardest hit by war or neglected by the new government. The Eclipse established areas of persistence. Here, their influence grew, providing black market goods, manipulating local grievances, and quietly intimidating or eliminating rivals. Over time, these areas became strongholds where the network could operate with relative impunity, train new recruits, and test new tactics. The government, aware of the Eclipse's adaptability, intensified its own strategies, deploying double agents, launching community outreach to win hearts and minds, and using the null's harmonics to counter propaganda. Yet, every crackdown risked driving more people into the underground, feeding the cycle of resistance and repression. The Eclipse, battered but evolving, was no longer just a remnant of the Iron Dawn. It had become a living, shifting threat, one that could not be rooted out by force alone in the industrial sprawl of the Perseus Fringe. The Eclipse's influence had quietly transformed the district of Blackgate. Once a war-ravaged slum, Blackgate was now a labyrinth of safe houses, coded graffiti, and whispered oaths. Here, the network's new alliances converged in the back room of a shutter machine shop. Eclipse L leader Rava met with two new allies, a grizzled ex-military captain named Harlan and a data broker known only as Cypher. The air was thick with tension and the low hum of encrypted comms. Rava laid out the plan. The government thinks we're scattered, but with your syndicate supply lines and Cypher's access to the city's grid, we can control Blackgate. We'll provide for the people food, power, protection. In return, they'll shield us. And when the time comes, they'll rise with us. Harlan nodded, his face marked by old scars. My people want order. You give us purpose, we give you muscle. Cypher's eyes flickered with data streams. I can jam the null's harmonics in this sector. Their hope won't reach these streets. Within days, the alliances bore fruit. Black market shipments flowed through Eclipse hands, and the syndicate's enforcers patrolled the alleys, keeping out government agents. Cypher's hackers disrupted surveillance, spreading disinformation and sowing confusion among the authorities. The Eclipse began distributing supplies, ration packs, medicine, even power cells, branding each delivery with their symbol. For many in Blackgate, the Eclipse became a lifeline, their propaganda painting them as protectors rather than conspirators. The government's response was swift but cautious. Layla and her counterintelligence team knew a direct assault would risk civilian lives and drive more into Eclipse arms. Instead, they sent Mara back into Blackgate, this time to seed doubt and quietly build a rival network of informants. Mara moved through the district, listening to grievances, offering small kindnesses, and reminding people of the regime's true legacy. She whispered the null's harmonics to those she trusted, planting the seeds of resistance even as Eclipse patrols hunted for spies. As Eclipse banners appeared in public squares and the government's presence faded, Blackgate teetered on the edge. The district became a microcosm of the galaxy's struggle. Hope and fear, memory and propaganda, unity and division, all colliding in the flickering shadows. One night, as a storm raged outside, Rava addressed a crowd in a hidden hall. We are the future. The Iron Dawn was only the beginning. In Blackgate, we remember what strength is. And soon, the galaxy will remember too. But in the back of the room, Mara listened and quietly activated her transmitter, sending a single word to Layla, ready. The storm outside Blackgate raged on, lightning illuminating the battered skyline and casting jagged shadows across the district's narrow alleys. Inside the hidden hall, Rava's speech had electrified the Eclipse loyalists, but Mara's silent signal had already set a different plan in motion. Layla, monitoring Mara's transmission, gave the order. Under the cover of the storm, government operatives and a handful of resistance fighters slipped into Blackgate. Their goal was not brute force, but surgical precision. Extract Mara, disrupt the Eclipse's new alliances, and avoid civilian casualties. As the Eclipse crowd dispersed, Mara slipped out a side door and met her contact, a young courier named Sarah, who carried coded messages for the Resistance. "It's tonight," Mara whispered. "They're planning to seize the district's power grid at midnight. If they succeed, Blackgate becomes their fortress." Sarah nodded and vanished into the rain, relaying the warning to Layla's team, 8T the power substation. Eclipse enforcers and Syndicate muscle gathered, ready to take control. Cypher's hackers were already inside, fingers dancing over consoles as they prepared to cut Blackgate off from the rest of the city and jam the Null's harmonics. Suddenly, the Resistance struck. Smoke grenades hissed through the vents, alarms blared, and confusion erupted. Layla herself led the team, moving with practice calm. "No killing unless we have to. Civilians come first," she ordered. Inside the chaos, Mara confronted Rava in the control room. "You're turning Blackgate into a prison," Mara said, voice steady despite the tension. "People want hope, not another regime." Rava's eyes flashed. "Hope is weakness. Order is survival. You of all people should know that." Before Rava could signal her guards, Layla burst in, weapon drawn. "It's over, Rava. Stand down, or you'll lose everything you've built." For a moment, the room was silent but for the storm outside and the hum of overloaded circuits. Rava hesitated, torn between ideology and the reality of her people's suffering. Around them, Eclipse fighters and Resistance operatives clashed, but the tide was turning. Civilians, emboldened by the Null's faint harmonics leaking through Cypher's failing jammers, began to push back against the Eclipse enforcers. With a bitter curse, Rava dropped her weapon. "This isn't the end," she spat, but the fight had gone out of her at BY Dawn. The government had reclaimed Blackgate. The Eclipse's alliances were fractured, their leaders captured or scattered. Layla's team worked to restore power and distribute aid, while Mara quietly helped Sarah and other locals form a new council, one that would give Blackgate a voice in its own future. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the storm clouds, the Null's harmonics played openly in the streets, and for the first time in years, Blackgate's people sang, tentatively but together. The defeat in Blackgate sent shockwaves through the Eclipse network. Cells across the galaxy found themselves isolated, their alliances shattered by government countermeasures and the withdrawal of Syndicate support. Cypher's digital webs unraveled as authorities seized servers and arrested key hackers. Harlan's ex-military faction, seeing the tide turn, abandoned the cause in favor of amnesty. Rava, wounded but unbroken, led the remnants of the Eclipse to a forgotten mining outpost on the edge of the Perseus Fringe. There, in the cold silence of abandoned tunnels, the final loyalists gathered. Their numbers were few, their resources depleted, but their resolve was undimmed. "We are the last," Rava admitted to her followers, her voice echoing in the dark. "But as long as one of us remembers, the dream survives." Yet, even here, hope was thin. Supplies dwindled. Messages from other cells went unanswered. Paranoia grew. Was there a spy among them? Or had the world simply moved on? It was Cypher, broken by months on the run, who made the final choice. Secretly, she contacted Mara and offered the outpost location in exchange for clemency. "It's over," Cypher said. "We can't build a future on fear and lies." Within hours, government forces surrounded the outpost. There was no battle, just a quiet surrender, as the last Eclipse loyalists laid down their arms, exhausted and defeated. Rava was taken into custody, her final words a whisper, "History is a wheel. Today you win. Tomorrow, who knows?" But for the people of the galaxy, the end of the eclipse was more than a victory. It was a chance to heal. Blackgate rebuilt, led by a council of citizens who remembered both the darkness and the light. The Null's harmonics became a song of remembrance and warning. Unity must be chosen, not imposed. Layla, Mara, and Lynn watched as the galaxy slowly mended. The scars of the Iron Dawn and the eclipse would never fully fade, but the people had reclaimed their future. And on quiet nights, as fires burned low and stories were shared, the tale of the eclipse's rise and fall became a cautionary legend. A reminder that the greatest strength lies not in control, but in the courage to remember, to resist, and to hope.